Hi everyone, I'm David Scranton and thank you for watching this video because today we're talking about a retirement strategy that can help you achieve your goals and frankly to do that regardless of market conditions. And it's called the income formula, and we'll talk about how and why it works. And to help me today on this also important topic is today's guest, James Locke. He's the co-owner of Pool Locke Associates located in Wilmington, Delaware. James has more than 20 years experience in the financial industry. James, always my pleasure to have you here on the show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here today.
So when you talk about investing for income, what are some of the most common misconceptions or misunderstandings that people might have about this topic?
The number one misconception or misunderstanding is risk. People always believe if I want more income in retirement or any time, if I want more income, I need to take more risk. And as it turns out, it's just not the case. In fact, normally income investing is inherently safer. So if you want more income, you can actually take less risk, which makes retirees more comfortable knowing that that income will be there for them year in and year out. So understanding that income doesn't necessarily mean more risk is the number one hurdle.
Now you find that sometimes that makes people a little skeptical about investing for income because they come to the table thinking it's going to require them to increase risk.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to kind of unwind years of head down saving, and I don't care where my return comes from. I just want return. So they don't understand that, hey, there's two pieces. And you talked about it already in that equation, that total return equals interest and dividends plus growth. TR equals I plus G. So we isolate that I portion, the income portion, to help them explain, hey, if you know your return or a good portion of your return is coming from income, then it's going to be there for you consistently. That's the only piece we really know.
Now that's what I find to be one of the misunderstandings, and maybe you can relate to this, is people might say, oh, I'm getting plenty of income because their advisor is sending them checks on an automatic basis, but they have no idea whether it's truly coming from income like interest and dividends or whether their advisor is selling principal every year to send them a check.
Now that's what you're talking about is engineering income. They're
Yes.
just assuming that they're getting money from their account. And what's happening is that advisor is selling shares of mutual funds, usually something along those lines, to generate that. And if the stock market and growth doesn't coincide with that model, well, now you're going to be using principal for your retirement.
That's right. That's right. And, it would seem to me like today more than ever, people are nervous about that. So tell me, you're in Delaware. Are people nervous about what they see going on in the economy right now in the financial markets? Or because they're from Delaware, do they have such blind faith in the president that they just think everything's going to be okay?
Well, they do. People do love the president here in Delaware, and he's always right around the corner causing traffic jams. But you know what? People they should be nervous about what's going on. I mean, we have war in Europe for the first time in 80 years. Inflation is very high and interest rates are going up. All these concerns about, hey, am I going to be okay in the future? And that's when we go right back to that first topic you talked about, which was not understanding how income works. Because even with those problems, if you focus on income, that's how you overcome those hurdles and get rid of that volatility so that your income is consistent.
So in many ways, investing for income could be the solution to a lot of their worries about the economy and the financial markets. But you're saying people don't innately realize that.
Yeah, if you want your retirement to be stress-free, you take from the I and not from the G. If you take from interest and dividends that you know is going to be there year in and year out, then you don't have to, we're always concerned. We always want things to be nice and easy and markets to move up consistently. But history has shown us that's not what happens. So let's figure out how to navigate this minefield of problems in such a way that your income is the number one priority, right? And then we can worry about, hey, how do we grow the pot or things of that nature? But if you take care of the most important piece, your income first, you're reducing your risk and you're making your future more secure.
Yeah, good point. Tell me, because everything going on right now, what's going on timely today, tell me what you find that is going on in the news that concerns people most about their finances, but also tell me what you think they should be the most concerned about when they listen to the news today.
You know, the biggest fear is always, am I going to run out of money? Is Social Security going to be there? Those kinds of baseline walk in the door.
But I mean, James, of newsworthy topics, what are they most concerned about today that they hear in the news? And
it's always right now it's inflation. Inflation is the number one concern because your money is losing value. And then you go back to that same issue. Well, I need to overcome inflation, which means I need to take more risk. And again, just not the case. You can overcome that inflation hurdle in more than one way. And that's where understanding how when you have income today, maybe you don't need it today, you need it in the future. Well, if you're investing for income today, it means you're going to have more income in the future. Mm-hmm. It's just math. It's not, it's not some sort of crystal ball. So people are concerned mostly when they come in our office about that inflation number. And that really ties back to the Fed. And are they going to be able to, keep interest rates under control so that we can keep inflation under control and we don't tank the economy?
So should inflation be the biggest concern, or should it be the Fed creating a recession? Because, sometimes the cure can be worse than the sickness itself. And this might be one of those times.
Yeah, it's really the Fed. That's the bigger issue. The Fed has, created more recessions or created and stopped just as many recessions by them fooling around with interest rates. They have to do this very carefully. They have to move in slow, small increments. You do anything too fast, you're going to spook the market. And you do anything too fast, like you said, you might kill the patient, right? That's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah, the arsonist and the fireman, like I always say. Final thoughts for our income generation members. Best words of wisdom from you.
Work with a fiduciary and work with an income specialist, because you need to make sure your assets are aligned with your phase in life. And if you're in retirement and you're drawing money from your assets, do it the right way. Make sure you're with a specialist who knows how to invest for income so that you can be sure that your money will last longer than you and your income will be there for you in a renewable resource year in and year out.
Yeah, and I will say specialist who specialize in retirement income is not your typical retirement planner. Most people who are so-called retirement planners get you up to retirement, but they don't know how to make that transition to that next phase of life, as you just said so eloquently, from the accumulation stage to the income stage. But James, you do that every day of your life. And thanks so much for being here with us, James Locke, on the income generation.
Thanks, David.
I became an income specialist because of what I saw with my mother, and more specifically, my grandmother. My grandmother came to this country in the early 1900s, and she was widowed at a very young age. And there weren't protections back then, so she struggled to survive and ultimately didn't have the income she needed in retirement. So when I was deciding how I wanted to help people as a financial advisor, the choice was easy. Helping people generate income in retirement so that they can live that retirement of ease rather than a retirement of worry just made sense. Having a good retirement plan means you're probably not set up right for retirement, because anytime someone uses the word plan, it means there's a chance of failure. And retirement should really be about knowing that you're generating the income, not just for what you need, but for what you want.
So today we're talking about tips as well as the do's and don'ts of starting a business in retirement. So to help me out with this all so important topic is today's special guest, James Locke, co-owner of Pool Locke Associates, located in Wilmington, Delaware. James has more than 20 years experience in the financial service industry. And you know what, James, it's always great to have you here on the Income Generation.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So tell me, I know most of your clients are individuals, but you probably have a decent number of folks that are also self-employed, some of whom probably even started their own businesses after retirement.
Absolutely. We have lots and lots of clients that are still working, but it may not be their first job because they came out of a lifelong career. And it doesn't matter what the industry is, but they came out of a lifelong career and now they're doing something, like you said, maybe they just want some extra income. Maybe they're trying to fill the time, but now they're doing something they love. And I'm surprised at how much. It's pretty close to 40% of our clients.
Wow, that's a big number. That's certainly bigger than my clientele. So, all right. So a lot of people are doing this. In your experience, do you find that those that are self-employed tend to be better money managers than those are perhaps who are employees of a company, or not really?
No, definitely. I definitely find that the people that move from a lifelong career, they've had that financial foundation, right? Because they worked that full career somewhere else and they likely have saved money. And they're more likely to have things like pensions or their retirement accounts generating enough base to allow them to kind of fund this new business that they're getting in. And it doesn't matter what it is. Maybe they're consulting in their previous field. Maybe they're in something new, right? But they usually have that good financial understanding that, hey, I can't just spend willy-nilly. I have to budget and I have to make sure that ends meet. So we find that they're actually pretty good at managing that financial piece of the new business, being an entrepreneur.
Well, good, because they have to be, right? As a business owner yourself, if you're not good at managing the finances, things can get away from you really quickly. And you and I both know some people who are financial advisors who delegated the management of the finances of their own business to somebody else, only to find out later that things had gone dramatically awry from how they had hoped. So that's good. And now you probably have people now, I would assume, that are thinking about starting their own business, that are, it's on their mind. Maybe they've talked to you about it. So tell me about that.
Yeah. When someone comes in and says, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I was an artist. I'm going to sell my art. I was a consultant and I'm going to continue to consult in other fields. Usually I sit down with my clients and I say, hey, let's go over some of these pros and cons. What's going to be good about this? What's not? And we often run through when we find people, 55 and older, they have much more maturity. They understand that they're bringing that previous experience with them. They have much more patience, right? They understand that this isn't going to just magically work right out of the gate. They're more practical about their business, what they do. They have that financial foundation. And normally, if somebody comes in saying, I'm thinking about starting a new business, they need to have a strong work ethic and honed interpersonal skills and have an appreciation for how much work it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are these some of the pros and cons, if you will, of that you find when you talk to people and you go through this list of people, the positives as well as the negatives of why they should or shouldn't start a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to sit down and go through all these because if they think they're just going to magically turn this, business into a cash cow, well, then maybe they're not ready to start their own business just yet. They need to understand it because we go through the cons as well. It's hard work for somebody to start a new business, sometimes much harder than expected. You're your own boss and the work may be gratifying, but it's far from easy. Maybe you have some bad habits that you took from a previous job into this one, and that's not going to work. And that's going to be just, exemplified bigger and bigger. It's going to get pushed bigger and bigger when you're your own boss. And there's also limited time for growth. You're not 30 anymore. You may be 55, 60, 65. So there needs to be a window of, hey, how long is this going to be before it starts working? And there could be pressure on you financially. if you're putting too much into it. So pluses and minuses.
And there are some folks that, a lot of folks over age 55 maybe do not know a lot about how the newer technology can help their businesses, like some of the younger folks might. May not have as much energy as they think to push it forward through the tough times, not just the dream of the good times.
Right.
And some may not even have management skills, right? They may have worked in a position where they didn't have to manage a lot of people, and maybe as this business grows, they're going to have to develop those. So again, some positives and negatives. Real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you right now about the financial markets and what's going on, because people, their 401ks were growing, right? And maybe they're thinking about retiring, or as we say, quote, retiring, but then again, starting their own business. They're going up and up and up, and then the 401ks got slammed back down, and now we're seeing a bit of a rebound. How might that play, or doesn't it play into the timing, in your opinion, of making that decision? If I were your client and said, hey, I want to retire from my full-time job and start my own business.
A lot of it's going to depend on how you're positioning yourself into retirement. Are you making the proper shift to move from, hey, I'm saving, to, hey, now I need this money to be a paycheck replacement, right? And if you can make that shift accordingly, well, then it may, the numbers may line up for you to say, hey, I'm generating enough income from my investments to float me in this new business. I'm going to get along, right? And that's really why people come walking into us. They're not looking to me to say, how do I be a better artist and sell my art? Or, how do I be a better consultant to the pharmaceutical industry? They want to know that they can go into something they're passionate about and know that the finances will be there behind them, and they don't have to cross their fingers and toes and hope the stock market keeps rallying up. Because as we've seen through 2022, it hasn't happened. And boy, has there been volatility, and has that been stressful to people doing this.
Yep, very much so, very much so. Final thoughts. What's your top piece of advice for those right now who are considering retiring from their full-time job and starting their own business?
Yeah, the first thing is there's a wealth of people out there that you can talk to about specifically the financial side of it. Talk with a fiduciary, talk with someone who understands running their own business. Right? As you said, as people who run our own businesses, we've been there. We know a lot of the pitfalls. So talking with someone who can help you make sure that you're going to make ends meet together is your first step to a bigger entrepreneurial world. And use your resources that you have had grown with you all during your career. Don't forget that you have all these contacts. You don't have to do it alone. Make sure you have the finances and work with as many people as you can.
Great advice. Great advice. I love it. All right, James, always a wealth of wisdom. I love talking with you. Thanks so much for being here. James Locke on the Income Generation. And welcome to this week's episode of the Elevated Advisor Podcast. I'm David Scranton, your host. And this week we have a very special guest. We have James Locke, president of, I need to say this slowly, Poole, Locke and Associates in Wilmington, Delaware. James, great to have you here, man.
Excellent job.
Yeah. Did I pronounce it properly?
That was perfect.
I'm 3/4 Polish. So if you say Poole, Locke quickly, it sounds like Polak and Associates. So I love saying that, as you know, because it just brings humor to my life personally. But so tell us about why the name Poole, Locke and Associates.
Well, comes from the mashup of course, me, James Locke, but my partner and really a mentor, Jerry Poole. He was in the industry for 60 years. Did a lot of different things in the industry, and he's really helped me progress, not just as a person in the financial industry, but in my personal life and spiritual life as well. Jerry was a kind man.
Kind man, yeah. And sadly, we lost Jerry not too long ago.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's tough when you lose a mentor. I know you know my story, right?
Yes.
I had a gentleman named Rick Metcalf as a mentor and lost him in really fewer than 3 years with him. So I feel blessed for the time that I had with him to learn from him. But it doesn't mean that you miss that mentor any less. Sometimes you go through and say, you know, what would Rick do in this situation? So I bet there's sometimes where you're making business decisions, you're saying, what would Jerry do in this place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have lots of times where I have a lot of experience with stocks and things of that nature and options, and somewhat on the fixed income side. I deal a lot with that now.
Right.
But anytime some very specialized life insurance questions come up, Jerry spent decades
doing that stuff.
and it's very complicated material.
And I want to focus, James, today on mentorship. Really, just the benefits you've gotten of mentorship and the power from that. But before we do that, would you mind just sharing for a moment, your background? How'd you start in business, and then what got you into this side of the industry?
Yeah, I started off. I graduated from Villanova University, and I ended up getting a job on the Philadelphia Stock Exchange as a independent options trader. So I wore one of those funny jackets, had a number, I yelled and screamed. And way back then, I didn't have all this gray hair, right? And that was a exciting and fun time, and I loved it. But as you're fully aware, the option industry changed, and the ability of single listed options and things like that disappeared. And at some point, my option mentor, who I first worked with, he decided that he was going to take all his money, leave, and race cars.
Okay.
So it left me without a job.
That's an expensive hobby, so he must have made a lot of money.
He did all right. He did really well. And I learned a lot about trading and things from him. But then there I was, kind of without a job. And
you make it sound so sad. Here I was without a job. Look at you now.
Yep. Yeah, I was without a job and had just had my first child was born. So I was like,
ooh, yeah, that's
the weight was coming on.
Sure.
But I had a family member who worked on the institutional side of the business.
Okay.
And out of nowhere, I got a phone call that said, "Hey, I think you'd be pretty good at this." So we helped for a long time. I helped a lot of people on the institutional side. So all those 401ks that you're putting into these different funds, I did a lot of work with the funds and helping organize and structure their data and their material, mostly on the sales side of how do they get their material where it's going to be.
Okay.
So now I had a second person who was helping me along in a completely different field. Kind
of sort of a mentor. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. I'm starting to see a pattern here. I get it.
He's still a good friend, and he's actually down here in South Florida. His name is Rick. But he gave me a lot of the nuances about the institutional side of business, which, as I'm sure you're aware, is very, very different from the retail side, which is where I am and you are to some degree.
You know what happened? He decided to take his money, retire, and race cigarette boats, right? Or no?
Once again, he decided to close down shop, which then also led me to kind of a realization that maybe I should be in charge
of your own destiny,
my
right?
Own destiny, right?
Right. You can't have a family and be unemployed every 5 years. That doesn't work well.
And so what ended up happening was I needed to spend some time with my father, who was dying, and I was blessed with that time in between jobs, and like the sound of music, right? When a door closes somewhere, God opens a window.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I was said, hey, you should go talk with this person, Jerry Poole. And he had breakfast every morning at the Hollywood Grill Diner from 7 to 7:30, 5 days a week. Everyone knew him. He had his own seat. So that's where I met him, at the diner. And we had a conversation just about helping people in retirement. At the end of that 30-minute conversation, he said, I'd like to talk to you again. And next thing I know, we had another conversation.
So he saw something in you. He saw a glimmer. He said, this guy can make it happen.
Yep.
I remember right after that, he called me. We had a conversation about you. Behind your back, completely behind your back. Your ears were probably ringing, right?
Absolutely.
So you decided, you worked it out, you decided to move forward, right? And I know also that part of the issue too was that at some point Jerry was going to retire.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, he never really did because he passed before he got to retire. But how many years did you have with Jerry as a mentor?
Yeah, about 5 years.
5 years, okay.
And
all right.
it was amazing to have that person sitting next to me in meetings from the first meeting all the way till my 1000th meeting with people. And every single time we would have a post game and he would say, "You did this really well. James, you messed up on this one again, you know, again, or, you know, or whatever it was." And that was a beautiful, beautiful thing. It helped me tremendously to have someone who was there on a day in and day out basis. And actually, let me tell you a story about you having a conversation with Jerry behind.
Sure. This will be good, I'm sure.
You were kind enough, you know, after that conversation with Jerry, you were kind enough to say, "Hey, you know, send them down to some of our larger mentoring programs where we have lots of advisors together." And, you know, you said, yep, send James down. That's perfect. And I got to...
I just really wanted to size you up. I want to see if he was making the right decision or not.
Well, I got to sit down with a lot of people on that time and had a lot of good conversations. And at the end of that, I walked up to you and I said, "Hey, you know, we need to have a little phone time, or, you know, dive your ear for a little bit." And you said, "Yep, make an appointment on my schedule," which is what you say all the time. Make an appointment on my schedule.
Right, because I'm not allowed to schedule my own appointments, because when I do, I'll always mess it up, right?
So I make an appointment on the schedule. I have a phone call. I remember sitting in my living room, and you said a lot of things. You said, "James, I see some potential in you. I see that, you know, you could do these things. You like helping people." And you told me something that I didn't believe.
Okay.
Right? You said, "James, here's what's going on. You think the sky is blue and white, but if you hang on long enough, you're going to find out that the sky is really purple."
I said that.
And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, Dave.
Was I at happy hour at this point, or was this during normal business hours?
It was pretty late. It might have been a Friday.
Okay, well, that might explain it.
But sure enough, after meetings with you, meetings with other people in our larger group, after 4 years, 5 years, I'm now starting to look up and say, you know what? The sky really is purple, right? And that's a lot of something we talk about all the time, but of limiting beliefs, right? Things that you don't think you can do, and that's where a mentor comes in. So well, that's where you come in how you mentor me. That's where Jerry comes in, how he mentors me. Where, you know, the famous saying, where if the reason I can see further is because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And that's really what mentors have done for me. They've shown me that I'm not learning something new, right? I'm just discovering things that I already know, right? And that happens on a day in, day out basis, and it never stops.
But in order to be able to do that, you've got to embrace my favorite C word, right? Which is you have to be coachable.
Coachable.
You have to be coachable. Yeah.
I was gonna say
and see, that's what Jerry saw in you. Yeah. Well, compliant too. That's my second favorite C word. That's right. But no, Jerry saw the coachability in you, and you know, when I was kind of checking you out, just saying, oh, you know, I want to make sure Jerry didn't miss anything. I don't know why, with all Jerry's experience, I would think he would miss something because he was really good at reading people, right? But yeah, you've proven to be very coachable, and so not only have you been coachable, but also, you know, you had a mentor that really cared about you. And that's the key. It's got to be someone who really cares about you. You know, if it's somebody who's just getting paid a little bit because they're mentoring you, but they don't care about you, it's not the same effect, is it?
No, not at all. And, I mean, while we were partners and business partners, and that's an important factor in everything, you know, Jerry never asked for any money for his time or anything like that.
Yeah.
He gave it freely, right? And like I said, I did mention, you know, Jerry helped me spiritual as well. He was a pastor.
Yes, I know that. I remember that. Yes.
Pastor as well. So a lot of conversations, you know, would sometimes venture into, let's just say, something spiritual, because, you know, we're helping people with their retirement, And something that you've said to me is, I do this every day. You do this every day. Lots of people do this every day. Sometimes we get a little numb to it. This person sitting down with me has one shot at it. One shot to get it right.
That's right.
Right? And it's now my responsibility to make sure that happens the right way. And if I don't do it right for them, that could be devastating down the line. So I really look at it as a personal responsibility.
Sure.
That, hey, if I don't want to fail you. Right? I don't want to fail you. And that's something, that Jerry instilled in me from a spiritual side, and you more from a practical side of,
Are you saying I'm an atheist? Is that what you're trying to say here? Because I'm really not.
I know you're not, because I've actually had spiritual discussions with you as well.
But it brings me to an important point, though, is that through mentorship, it's important that you have a mentor that shares your value systems, right? Like, think about it. If you had a mentor who was an atheist, right, it probably wouldn't work for you, right? You couldn't relate. It's not transferable.
It's not. And I have worked with lots of people who are nice people, and I sit there and I say, you know what? I don't think I could partner with you on any level. Happy to go out and enjoy a nice meal together, but it's, I'm not going to be able to take your ideas and make them my own.
Yeah. So imagine now, I know this was your first mentor, but your first mentor went ahead and made a lot of money and went ahead and raced sports cars, right? But imagine today, if you had a mentor in this business that his or her only concern was just to make a ton of money so they can go do something extravagant like that. I don't think that would work for you, right? Because that's not what motivates you to get out of bed every morning.
No, it's not. I'm actually excited every time I sit down with someone, and after going through a process with them, I can see them starting to come around and understand that all this money that they've worked so hard for their whole life, it actually can be protected, right? And it can be put in a way that will mesh with their life and the way they envision things, because it's not always, in fact, very rarely is it about return. Right? Very rarely is it about return. That's something that's advertised in our industry, but it's most importantly about peace of mind.
Well, that's one of the sky is purple things, right?
Sky is purple.
Your job is not to get somebody maximum return. Your job is to help them establish their goals and help them reach their goals. That's what it's all about. And I would tell you that you're going to be more successful throughout your career, because you've only had really 6 years in this part of the business now. You're going to be more successful throughout your career because you're not doing it for the money.
Right.
Yeah, the money's great. It's a byproduct, but you're doing it for the real reason. You really want to help people. And just like with mentorship, right? If a mentor is mentoring you for the money, it sooner or later becomes obvious, right? Their gig is up, right? You could read through it, you can figure it out. There's going to be times when that person just doesn't want to give you the time of day because they're making more money doing something else, right? And most successful advisors who are mentors do make more money on their own, right? Jerry could have made a heck of a lot more money talking to his own clients, right? But he wanted to mentor you even if it meant a drop in income.
It also, he wanted to make sure that his clients were taken care of.
That's right.
Before the money even enters into the picture, part of, which I found out later, and I'm sure he discussed with you, was, hey, I'm not going to be here forever. And, he saw the future. Yeah. Right. And, he said, hey, how do I make sure that all these people that I have transitioned are now taken care of past me? And that's where I came in. And now that made a lot of sense to me. Right. And like you said, if he was having a discussion about how he could churn out, money and I would be filthy rich, I probably would have left that breakfast meeting saying, all right, well, there's an opinion.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's not what happened.
Yeah.
That's not what happened. And it really resonated with me. And then, ultimately with you as well. So I'm very comfortable standing on your shoulders and seeing further. It's great.
And opinions are interesting, right? Like, we're although this won't be aired till after the Super Bowl, my opinion We're recording this the week of the Super Bowl leading up to it. My opinion is by the time this gets aired, Philadelphia will have lost the Super Bowl.
Go Birds.
But your opinion is going to be different, isn't it? So opinions are pretty much worthless, right? You have a 50-50 shot of being right here. So, you know, let's give advice to, you know, financial advisors that maybe up to this point have been rugged individualists, right? There are some people who aren't as humble as you, and whether it's being a Christian that gives you the humility or whatever, I don't know, but I'm sure it helps. But you have to have the humility in order to be coachable, to even seek out a mentor, right? If you think that you've got, you know, all the answers, or you're just very, very autonomous, right? Like, you know, we use, as you know, we use Culture Index a lot when we're hiring somebody as a profile, like a Myers-Briggs, and one thing it tests for is your level of autonomy, right? So if your A trait, your autonomy is off the chart, you might fight it. Like me, right? My autonomy is off the chart when you give me a Culture Index survey, right? It's 3 standard deviations to the right. It's crazy, right? But still, I sought out mentors because of the, you know, the humility side of it. So what would you tell people that have that high autonomy trait, that might be rugged individualists, to figure, I can figure it out myself?
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel, right? Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of people who have gone through this, and don't, like you said, don't think so highly of yourself that you're better than everyone. While that may be the case, right? You might be better than everyone. You might be the best salesman. You might be the best person to help this person. There is so many pieces in this industry that I am still learning about, right? I mean, I'm a finance major. I've been in the option world. I've been on the institutional side. I'm on the retail side. I have a lot of different pieces that I can fall back on and have experience with. And every single day, I'm learning something new.
Yeah. There's always somebody who's doing bigger numbers than you in this business. And it's like, you know, early 2000s, I was profiting over $2 million a year, full-time financial advisor, working most of the time 4 days a week. You know, life was pretty good. And then I come down in Southern Florida 15 years ago and I buy a house. And I'm thinking, you know, oh, wow, I'm a successful guy. And you come down to Southern Florida and you see these 100 and 200 foot mega yachts and these huge waterfront properties. And all of a sudden you realize you're really just this big. There's always somebody that's bigger than you. So no matter how successful you are, if you want to get to the next step, somebody like you, right? You're a smart enough guy. You can figure most things out on your own. But why would you want to take 10 years to figure it out and reinvent the wheel when the wheel exists? You can get there in 2 years by learning from the right mentor.
Yeah, standing behind someone and just watching them do it. You know, and everyone's going to do it a little bit differently. And at some point, you're going to have to say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it.
That's right.
At some point, you're going to make it your own, right? But you don't need to write the book. Right? Read everyone else's book. Understand what everyone else is doing.
Well said.
And then pick it up and take it from there.
Yeah.
You know.
So Jerry got you pretty far. You know, you went from
really far
starting in the business, and now you have how many people on your team?
So right now we have 3 people on the team. Besides me, I'm looking to bring on another fully licensed person, just because the message that we're giving across, the income message, is so powerful that I'm finding it's hard for me to keep up.
Yeah.
Right. And again, same thing. Now I'm talking with people not about how to invest for income, what's the best way to get this message across. Now I'm talking about is, hey, how do I manage my staff? How do I manage my office? Which is something when you sit down on day one, never crosses your mind. And that's an important thing. You know, do you want to hang your own shingle? That's what you said. Do you want to hang your own shingle, or do you want to work with someone else?
Yeah.
And I know that you've dealt with people that hang their own shingle. You've dealt with people that want to be in the office, and one's not better than the other.
Right.
It's just different.
Right.
And it would bother me if I was working in someone's office. I'd actually rather have, less money and my name on the door.
Yeah.
Because that means something to me.
That's right. That's right.
It always has.
And it's important to always figure out, who you are and from that perspective. But what's so impressive to watch, if you're picking up what James is saying here, is that, he went in 6 years from 0 to now just about having 4 people as part of her team. So obviously that means that James here is doing a pretty darn good volume of business. And how far along do you think you'd be if you had to figure everything out yourself, if you didn't have the benefits of mentorship?
I would, let's say about halfway.
Halfway.
I'd say without Jerry and you pushing me in the right direction. But really, the most important thing is for me to understand that the sky is purple.
Sky's purple.
The most, because every time I think I can't do it, or there's something like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
How am I going to do that? I say, well, you know what? I have my name on the door. You come in the lobby, it says Pool Locke Associates. You got to be careful how you say it.
You pronounce it properly. That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't think I could do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And you said you'd be at half the volume, but what's funny is this business has a 90% failure rate. So for somebody to come in as an independent, you're pretty tenacious, so you probably wouldn't have failed to be part of that 10%.
Quit. I don't ever quit.
But for a lot of people, without a mentor, they're going to fail. And a mentor means survival versus non-survival, right? But for you, it meant going from ground zero to 4 full-timers in 6 years, growing a really, really nice business.
Yeah.
So now you're at a point where you couldn't even see that vision 6 years ago, correct?
This was not even on the radar.
Okay. But as you move, the horizon moves with you, right? So where's your horizon now? What's your next step? Where do you see the business going now that it's moved along? And I'll see if you don't go far enough, if your horizon isn't far enough away, we might have to have another Sky's Purple conversation.
Where am I envisioning? I'd like to help more people.
Yeah.
Right? I'd like to be more efficient with my time and get this message out to more people, because at the end of the day, that's the most important piece. That's what makes me feel good, is when somebody steps in my office for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time, 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year, and understands that they're going to actualize their dreams that we probably talked about together.
That's right. It's a really good feeling, and I know you haven't had enough of that visceral reward yet after 6 years, but that reward gets bigger and bigger as you walk people through retirement. So there's 2 ways, though, that you can do this, 2 ways that you could help more people. And you've been really good so far at delegating with your team. So all the paperwork's delegated. When you do any type of lead generation marketing and somebody's setting and confirming the appointment, you have somebody do that. So you're not doing that. So what you're doing now is you're servicing your existing clients, and you're talking to new people. So there's 2 ways that you can grow. The first way, right, is to say, okay, I need to get that advisor on, which you mentioned, who's licensed, who can service a lot of my clients, who can do a lot of the client reviews. So now you spend 100% of your time talking to new prospects, helping them build the vision. You're not spending any time servicing people, because you have some people that are as good as you that are dedicated to that, right? And that's one horizon. The next horizon could be to say, well, if I really want to help more people, then I want to bring on more financial advisors in the client acquisition role, not just the client service advisor role, client acquisition advisor role. So where's your horizon right now as you look to the future?
So I have learned enough to not say no to, maybe having additional people doing what I'm doing. But it is about short-term goals. So the first short-term goal is bringing someone on who can help me service this ever-growing base of people that I have. So that's the first one. And then, without shutting it down at that point, saying, okay, does it make sense for me to move forward from there to, get other people in doing the same thing that I'm doing? And, that'll be something that maybe I'll talk with you about.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll see. And it also depends on, where I am personally. what's going on.
But you can see the vision beyond the next step now.
Absolutely.
You've learned to, because you're a man of faith, you've learned to have faith that the sky really can be purple.
That's right.
And even though you can see here that there is something beyond that, right? There is life after death. Well, guess what? There's also life after having that licensed client service advisor on board, right?
It's not hard. Let's put it this way. It was hard for me to imagine having my own office. It's not hard for me to imagine having 2 licensed client service people and, 2 other people selling to new people.
That's right.
Right. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to get there. I'm not saying I even want to get there, but I can actually envision it.
Yeah.
Now.
And you make the decision as you get closer. You don't have to make the decision right away. It's like people, if they plan for retirement 20 years out, they don't really know for sure what they're going to do in retirement, but it doesn't mean you don't create the vision. You create the vision and you know that the real desires are going to change, the goals are going to change as the years go on.
Right.
And the same thing happens, in our business. So what are your final thoughts for those out there that are listening, viewing, that want to, maybe are questioning whether they need to have a mentor, or maybe they're trying to figure out, gosh, how do I find a mentor?
You have to surround yourself with people who are doing the things that you want to do. That's number one.
That are ahead of you, in the business.
Yeah, and you want to make sure you look around the room and say, everyone or most people here are doing this better than I am. Mm-hmm. So that's a good sign, right? If everyone's better than you around you, you're going to learn. If you're at the poker table and everyone's better than you, you should stand up and walk away. Right? But if you're
good advice, by the way.
but when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you have, like you said, like-minded people, right? And then you're going to find out who has the love to teach, right? And someone's going to want to pass along their excitement to you, and that's what I get from a handful of people in our organization. That's what I certainly get from you, and that's what I got every single day from Jerry, was that love of teaching, of saying, hey, James, this is in your head already. Let me just show you how to access it. Right?
Yeah. And you could, and to be active looking for those folks. I mean, don't just hope that you stumble across the proper mentor. You were fortunate in this last iteration that the mentor found you and talked you into getting in this part of the business. So this is your final step in your career, I would assume,
Unless I'm going to, like the first guy, go race cars. I think I'm good where I am.
No, I don't think that's yeah. If anything, you might, you're more apt to go become a missionary somewhere if you're going to do something else, or
maybe I'll help people learn to ski.
I was saying, go be a ski instructor. I was going to say that. I know that's your passion, what you love to do. But you can. So if you're in the annuity part of the business, your FMO or IMO or NMO, whatever you want to call it. I think one of the most important things in finding a wholesaler for those annuities, that organization is an organization whose value system is enough like yours that you feel like you can learn from individuals that are there that are ahead of you. If you're with a registered investment advisory firm or even a broker dealer, again, you want to have a firm where you think the values are like yours. So the people that are ahead of you, that are bigger than you, that you feel like you can find a mentor there, right? Yeah. And if you're totally at home, totally alone, you're totally independent, well, then you go to industry conferences, right? If you're on the insurance side, you can go to MDRT meetings, go to other conferences, and actively seek out people that are, where you envision yourself being there steps ahead, and again, have that same value system.
You're not wasting your time listening to other people talk about how they succeeded.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean you're going to succeed that way, but it does mean, you're learning their steps.
Yep. Have childlike curiosity when you're talking to them. And the problem in our industry is salespeople like to talk about themselves, right? And the best thing is when you go to those conferences, don't talk about yourself. Ask them questions. Just ask. So it's kind of like, think about being on a first date, right? So you guys or you ladies that are here, it doesn't matter. You're on that first date. The smart thing to do is not talk about yourself, to ask questions of the other person. And the same is true when you're kind of on that first date with somebody who, you never know, could be a potential mentor. So
that's right.
James, it's been my pleasure. I thank you so much for your words of wisdom today.
Dave, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, I think you helped a lot of people for sure. So, and thank you for being with us once again today on the Elevated Advisor Podcast. I'm David Scranton, here with James Locke, president of Pool, Locke & Associates, as I say it carefully, right?
That's right.
Wilmington, Delaware. And hey, I'm glad you're with us, and I really hope you join us next week. Go Eagles, right?
Go Birds!